Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube my channels are ddarko2012 and ddarko2013. Alright, so Cyprus. The first article I have is EU stiff-arms Cyprus after country says no to bank bailout deal. Eurogroup president's response to Cyprus's parliament decision to totally reject the bailout bank deal today is only 2 sentences, and it offers no help at all. I take note to the decision of the Parliament of Cyprus on the government's proposal for one-off stability levy. It says, I confirm that the Eurogroup stands ready to assist Cyprus in its reforms efforts and reiterate the position of the Eurogroup as I did yesterday. German finance minister said basically the same thing. Says we regret the decision. Cyprus requested an aid program, and says that Cyprus needs to be able to return to the financial markets. For that, Cyprus's debts are too high. He says it's a serious situation. No one's to blame for the situation other than itself. He says he doesn't think it's a business model. Its business model works anymore, and warns Cyprus must act quickly. So, protecting their own, Russians offer an alternative to the Cypriot banks tax. So, I've heard different theories on this whole thing about just looting private accounts to see if they could get away with it. And like I said, if they didn't do that, then they would just They would just impose a tax. They would just they do the bailout, and then they would just tax people and increase their taxes or whatever, instead of just looting their private bank accounts. So yeah, maybe they are just testing the waters to see if they can do that. You have one person saying, I think it was Fulford, which I think he's lost most credibility, that this is an attack on the German banking system. And you have that Russian bear dude and 108 Morris, 108 saying that this isn't going to affect the Russians. This will actually help them, even because they have 20% of their 20% of these banking accounts and the wealth. Basically 20% of Cyprus is Russian, and they're rich Russians, so there's a lot of money. But this individual says that a lot of them are from the 90s, the post-communist Soviet era, and a lot of it's dirty money. And Putin and Russia want that money to come back into Russia and help Russians people in their economy. So it would be a good incentive for them to do that. And here you can see them actually kind of sweeping in, right? And it says here, when the European Union said it would bail out Cypriot banks by seizing percentage of private deposits, Cyprus citizens erupted. Russian government officials also raged on behalf of Cyprus's many Russian deposits, which I'm not really sure is all true. Meanwhile, Gazprom, the giant Russian energy company, quietly acted by offering a private bailout plan rather than tax deposits. Cyprus could raise money to right its economy by selling Gazprom exploration rights to offshore gas deposits in the Mediterranean Sea. So this is pretty interesting if it all comes down to energy. It says it illustrates how a sprawling wealthy company so deeply entwined with President Putin of Russia that it is often called a state within a state, kind of like the CIA, right? Intelligence within intelligence, CIA within the CIA, is willing to seize an opportunity and exploit weaknesses and divisions within Europe to cement its position and power. The other thing I forgot to mention was that it was just an old-fashioned grab. They need money. The EU, that is. It says, but the emergence of an independent gas industry in Cyprus could further undercut Gazprom's monopoly pricing power in Europe, already threatened by the globe gas glut from the American shale gas boom. So it says here that large deposits found recently off the coast of Israel. I've covered this. It says here, Cyprus turns to Moscow. Scenarios for a Russian role in the bailout. On Tuesday, Cyprus rejected the terms of the bailout package offered by Brussels and now turning to Moscow for help. Russian President may charge a very high price in exchange for aid for the nearly bankrupt Eurozone country. And speaking of natural gas, we know that part of the Syrian operation is to get a natural gas line set up in Syria, and and flow and basically provide natural gas in that to Europe as well. And that was supposed to be run by Qatar. I've covered this before, and it was basically meant to compete with Gazprom, Russia's gas giant. This is from February 11th, 2013. Israeli firm gains rights to Cyprus gas field. It says that a U.S. firm has ceded 30% of its rights to a gas field off Cyprus's south coast to Israel's Dalek and a subsidiary Anver Oil Exploration. So, no sums were disclosed. They said the deal paves the way for Cyprus and Israel to pull and export gas reserves after processing them at a facility in Cyprus. They've also, Cyprus that is, signed oil and gas exploration deals with France, France's Total, Italy, and South Korea. Then you have this article from March of last year. A lot of this Cyprus stuff was exactly around the same time last year, I noticed. Gazprom mulls joining Israel's gas boom. Gazprom, Russia's biggest energy conglomerate, is reported to be looking for work with Israel on the Jewish state's vast offshore natural gas reserves. They're sending top execs to Israel to discuss a partnership in the country's offshore gas fields. Says it's likely to heighten tension over an energy bonanza in eastern Mediterranean. I think one of them was actually Turkey. Lebanon, Cyprus look to natural gas reserves. This is from the January of this year, 2013. It says Cyprus president and Lebanese president have agreed to boost cooperation, looking to ways to explore offshore oil and gas fields that experts believe may have abundant natural gas deposits. But these energy fields lie in a politically tricky area in the waters between Lebanon, Cyprus, and Israel. Okay, now moving on here. Nigel Farage, message to Europeans, get your money out while you can. So, in a TV appearance, says here, since the wealth tax for Cyprus was announced, the Englishman pulls no punches. In all his years and experience and desperation of the European Union's leadership, never did he think, it says here, that they would resort to stealing money from people's savings account. The simple fact that they know they cannot let any country leave, no matter how small, for once one country goes, the whole deck of cards will come tumbling down. There is now clear, irreconcilable differences between the north and the south of Europe. They are quite capable of doing it in Italy, Spain, and anywhere. The message that sends to people is get your money out while you can. And George Osborne, do not invest in the Eurozone. He concludes you have to be mad to do so. Interesting, too, because I think Nigel Farage, he's able to say what he wants to say. You think about Rothschild and how the Rothschild's family banking dynasty pretty much owns Europe. They divvied it up, but the strongest ones are in the UK, and they're not part. Well, they don't have the euro. Basically, they still have the pound as their currency, and but I think they're part of the EU. So I'm thinking when you see the UK leave the EU, that's a signal that old Rothschild doesn't want to be part of what's coming. So maybe I'm wrong on some of the particulars, but that's kind of how I see it. And so that's why they allow Nigel Farage to do what he's doing, so that, when the time comes, they'll be able to muster up enough support. We just covered an article recently about a poll survey that many in Britain were ready to pull out and support the Independence Party and pull out of the EU. And that's why you have people like Ron Paul, they do the same thing too. Who knows, right? Because didn't they just pass that transatlantic treaty, kind of trade treaty, and it's like a NATO on steroids. So who knows? Maybe when the EU collapses, maybe they'll just link up the United States and Europe together, and that's all part of the plan: destroy what you build and create something new. French police raid home of IMF boss Christine Lagarde. Authorities searched the Paris apartment of the IMF director on Wednesday as part of an investigation into her handling of a settlement paid out to Bernard Tapie in 2008 while she was a French finance minister. So this follows this tax investigator who is supposed to be investigating fraud is launched against a budget minister. I guess he had those Swiss accounts. So said he's basically also in charge of the battle against tax evasion, has announced tough measures to fight it. A report found that the minister had an undeclared Swiss bank account until 2010. CVS requires employees to report weight or pay a fine under new healthcare rules. We're just talking about how new healthcare would basically be where it's kind of already doing it. No care to the elderly, no care to children, just care to the useful eaters, which are people that are, 20 years old to 50, right? The workforce. So, CVS Pharmacy Company is requiring all employees to submit detailed health profiles to their insurance company or pay a monthly fine to continue receiving health coverage. Employees must submit their weight, body fat levels, blood glucose levels, and other vital statistics before May 2014. Some critics say that these policies will basically lead to companies firing and laying off workers that prove to be expensive. The European Central Bank, or EBC, entire system is based on usury, says Chris Dorsey. So he says that the entire operating system of the European Central Bank, which is a European arm of international Zionist banking cartel, is based on usury. The comments come after Cypriot lawmakers voted against the levy on bank deposits. So it says here the entire system is based on usury. It's based on a small number of people creating money from nothing and then charging the citizens of what used to be sovereign nations usurious interests with no legitimate or lawful authority to do so. And there's an interview by 108 Morris by this one individual, and he was talking about this, and yeah, it is nuts, because it really is corporatism to a T. I've said this many times, and I'll always say it, privatizing the profits. So when things are good, they take all the profits. Now all these companies now that were bailed out, they give themselves raises and golden parachutes and stuff, and while at the same time firing people that have been loyal workers, and then outsource work, and then but then they don't. None of the profits go back. Only the losses go to the people who supposedly bailed them out, right? Or really, it wasn't a bailout. They were just getting rewarded for carrying out fraud. So I mean, when you have the Department of Justice head like Eric Holder saying that, you know, it'll disrupt the economy too much if these people get if they're responsible for their actions of scamming people out. Where in Iran, you know, you'll see them hanging, right? They'll hang these bankers that carry out this stuff, and then they say, "Ooh, that's brutal, that's barbaric," right? In the West, but here, this, you know, it's not brutal or barbaric to steal people's wealth to where they're living on the streets. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing brutal or barbaric about that, and letting them go. So he says the international Zionist banking cartel exhibited itself in the U.S. with the Federal Reserve, and Russia with the Bank of Russia, and they all take their orders from the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland. So he's saying that in Cyprus it's just an experiment that the owners of the European Central Bank are playing right now to see how far they can push the people and see what kind of reaction they're going to get. Defense contractor allegedly compromised by honey trap from ABC. Defense contractor and former U.S. Army officer have been charged with communicating national defense secrets to a 27-year-old Chinese national with whom he had a romantic relationship. Says it was a woman referred to as Person 1. So it was about national defense information regarding existing war plans, information regarding nuclear weapons, and relations with international partners. Former NASA NIA employee arrested by FBI trying to leave United States. Says even more troubling, the investigative report identified how Mr. Yang was allowed by NASA and NIA supervisors to take his work and volumes of other NASA research back to China for a period of time, as documented in an investigative report they received. A former employee of NASA Langley Research Center was sitting on the China-bound plane in Dulles International Airport when the feds caught him, and now they're going to charge him with lying to federal investigators about what he had in his possession. Researcher gets 41 months in jail for revealing AT&T's iPad security hole. He warned AT&T about a gaping hole and how the company's website handles data requests from iPads. Will spend the next 41 months in jail for hacking. The so-called hacker, 26-year-old Arnheimer, discovered in 2010 that AT&T's website was forking over email addresses for iPad users if simple URL requests included AT&T's internal numbers to use to identify iPads. Which is interesting because this is just 3 days after this article came out. Carnegie Mellon NSA seek high school hackers. Remember? I just covered this. Looking for the nation's next generation of cyber warriors for offensive and defensive strategies, right? A hacking competition. So they're looking for criminals, right? That's what they're looking for, supposedly. They want them to come work for the good guys. The bad guys working for the good guys. When you look at the same story, titled a different way, U.S. computer hacker gets 3.5 years for stealing iPad user data. There's his picture. They said he concocted the fiction and he was trying to make the internet more secure. Well, that's what the NSA is looking for, right? And the people support it, so they support this whole thing. Go work for the complex, go work for the Matrix, right? South Korea raises alert after hackers attack broadcasters. So, and 2 major banks, they blamed it on North Korea. But see, the people in the West probably already forgot this because they only have a memory for about 30 seconds. Is North Korea accuses U.S. South Korea of cyber attacks 5 days prior. So always a reaction, right? An action from a reaction. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.